Hello viewers, in this lesson we will cover key draft moves that are used to prevent shots. The square diagram can be used to find moves in draft that prevent combinations. It can also be used to identify combinations. So let's get started. If you look at this position and if you draw the square diagram, we see that the black piece at 12 and 14 has a matching piece at 32 and 34. So white also has a piece at 32 and then 34. This position usually makes it difficult for black to take a shot. Now the piece at the vertex of 14 should have a matching piece at the vertex of the square at 34. The same thing applies to 12. The vertex of the square at 12 should have a matching piece of the vertex at 32. And these pieces, 32 and 34, should be supported using the key squares. White can support this piece by playing 41-37 and can also play 43-38 to support the piece at 32. And 37 and 38 are key squares to the vertex at 32. 28 and 27 are also key squares to the vertex at 32. Now, the same thing applies to 34. So, in this case, this piece at 34 can be supported using 39 and then 40. 39 and 40 are key squares. White can play 45, 40, or 44-39 to support the piece at 34. The position of white becomes very strong. So this can occur in any of the position of the game. Let's say if black has a piece at 12 and then 14 and you have no piece at 32 and 34, this makes your position slightly weak. Your opponent can take advantage of the weakness in your position. Because white doesn't have a piece at 32 and then 34, it makes your position vulnerable. Taking the key squares without supporting it with the piece at the vertex can make your position vulnerable or weak, can make it weak. If black has a piece at, let's say, 12, it can be any position. But I'm using the 12 and then the 14 as an example. We'll be looking at some examples in a game, so you understand how this works. Now, another one is also to control the center of the square. So you control the center of the square. So the center of the square will be 23. Let's say in this case, it's going to be 23. So if you have a square, let's say a double square, so the piece at 39 controls the center of the square. So in this case, let's say black plays 3-8. If black plays 3-8, you must also take control of the center of the square. Controlling the center of the square also prevents a lot of shots. And then another thing is, if you have a piece at 26, this piece must be supported using 33. And also, if you have a piece at 25, it must be supported using 28. So these are some of the things you need to know. If you have a piece at 25, you must have a piece at 28. In this case, black plays 2-7. So if you draw the square diagram, we can move to the center of the square. We move to the center of the square to take control of square 38. All right, so let's look at some examples. Now, in this game, white played 48-43, but we see that the piece at 17 here has no support, as we have seen. So the piece at 17 has no support over here. And then the center of this piece, 37 and 39, is 48. And that piece is also removed. So this piece is controlling the center here with reference to square 39 and 37. The piece at 48 represents the center of that square, with 37 and 39 being the vertex. 48 is the center. Because you don't have a piece at 37, 48 is also removed. And you have a piece here which has no support at 37. This opens up for a shot. So white played 48, 43. And we see that there's no piece at 37. If you look at the piece at 17 here, we don't have any piece at 37. This piece here can be transported to 22. The piece at 35 can be transported to 22. And black takes to 48. Let's look at another example. Now with this one, black plays 24, 30, and white moves to 16. White moves to 16. If black removes the piece at 13, because we have a piece at 33 here, so if black moves the piece at 13 to 18, here becomes a weakness because of this piece over here. If black play this, and from what we have been studying, we have a piece here with reference to the vertex at 13. We have key squares here. The piece at the vertex is removed. So if this piece is removed, white will take, black will take to 1. Then because there's no piece at 13, white can take the shot to king. So white can play this, black will take, and then white will take to king. Let's look at another one. Here, black plays 13, 18. You have a piece at 16 here. You should not lose the piece at 13. Playing 13, 18 makes your position weak because this piece here can be transported to 38. And because you don't have any piece at 22 and 23, the piece at 42 can move to king at 2, or the piece at 43 can move to king at 1. So there's no piece at 22 and there's no piece at 23. If you draw the square diagram, you see that there's no piece here. And now the center of this piece, if you draw the double square, and then here represent the center of the second square. So you need a piece at 13. So the piece at 13 need not to be removed. The same thing applies to the piece here. Again, the piece at 43 has no support. Then if you draw the double square, you see that the center of the square here, 12, there's no piece. So you need a piece at 12. So you need a piece at 12. And because this center is empty, it opens up for a combination. So you need a piece at the center here. All right. Let's pick another example. Now with this one, black plays 14, 19, which creates weakness. So 14, 19 was played by black. If you draw the square, white needs to play 42, 37. White needs to play 42, 37. And then black has to take to 30. Now, if you look at the position critically, you see that this piece here, if you draw the square diagram, this piece here, you see that there's no support at square 14. 14 has no support. And the center of the vertex of 12 and 14 is 3. And 3 is empty. 5 is also empty. 5 also represents the center. And then 1 also represents the center. And because there's no piece at 14, white can transport the piece at 30 to 19 by playing 29, 24. And now white can play 28, 22 to take the shots. So again, let's look at the position. There's a weakness at 14, and because black has a piece here, this piece can be transported to 28 and the shot will be taken. With this one, black played 16, 21, and white has to play 32-27, and then 17 will be removed. Now if you look at the position again, white can remove the piece at 17, making the position weak, and then the shot can be taken. Then we'll look at another one. Here white played 31-27. Now again, if you look at the position, we see a weakness at 39. So if you draw the square diagram again, we see that this piece at 19 has no support at 39. So there's a weakness over here, and the center has no piece as well. So what black needs to do is to play 23-29 for the piece at 34 to move to king at 1. Then black will take to 34, white will capture the piece at 34, he will move to 29, and then black has to transport the piece at 1 to 23, and then the shot to be taken to 50. So this is how it goes. So now black can transport white king to the 23, and then the shot will be taken. Let's take 3 more examples. Now with this one, white played 33-29, and looking at the position, we see that the 42 here has no support, 44 has no support, the piece at 30 can be transported to 28, and then the shot to be taken. With this, black played 19-23 and white played 30-25. Now again, there's a weakness. If you draw the square diagram, the position at 39 is weak, so black can transport white piece at 24 to 33, and then the shot to be taken to king at 48. With reference to 39-37, the center is 48, and then the center too, there's no piece over there, so this represents a weakness. Black can transport white piece from 24 to 33, and then transport the piece at 31 to 22, and then the shot to be taken. So with this one, black played 34-29, and white spotted the weakness. So now if you draw the square diagram, we see that the piece at 43 has no supporting piece at 23, has no supporting piece at 23, and then the center 14 can be removed using the piece at 29. If white plays 30-24, black will have to play 20-29, and then white will have the chance of removing the piece at the center of the square over here, and the piece at 26 will be transported to square 28, and then the shot will be taken to king at 5. So let's see how it goes. White played, black took, then the center will be removed, and then the piece at 26 will be transported to 28, and then the shot to be taken. So we see that the piece at the vertex of the square 43 will take the shot. And then let's look at the last example. With this one, black played 21-27, and white took, black also captured to 27. Now we see a weakness over here. If you draw the square diagram, there's no piece at 11. The piece at 33 has no support at 13 and 11. And then if you watch critically, this piece at 26 can be transported to 28, and then 33 will take the shot to king at 2. So what you need to do is to remove this piece. So this piece must be removed. So if you look at it, if you play, black would take to king at 49. So you need to play 44, 40 to transport the piece at 35 to 44. Then we can play 28, 22 for this piece to be transported to 40. Then the shot can be taken. And the game is won by white. So the game is won by white. I believe you've learned from this lesson, and in our next lesson we'll be looking at advanced strategies for maintaining positional balance in drafts. Thank you for watching the video. See you in my next lesson.